I don't think of it as therapy so much as an understanding of myself without resolution. It's a way to explore what I think and what I'm confused about, as well as to understand my family. The secrets are always the beginnings of a story, or rather the contradictions. And so those have been wonderful for me to explore myself as well as through fiction. The story begins for me with an image that I have, and the image is not visual. It has everything in it. It's like a little moment in time, and there's a place and a time and a feeling and a sensibility, and I have to work from there to see what's in it. So from there I have ideas, a kind of tension. I have a lot of notes I've written into a journal, and I begin with my story knowing that first chapter will be thrown away later. So I work very slowly into this world, and at some point in this world I discover more the heart of the story. It's what my first editor called when the story is felt. And from there the story moves more quickly toward the end. There's a lot of research that goes on in between, both before, during, and it simply continues. And that's part of the fun for me, actually. Well, I started another novel 8 years ago, and I started this one 3 years ago. When I found the photograph of my grandmother, it became an obsession to find out who she was and whether or not it was true, which I still don't know. I don't know for sure. I don't know 100%. And so I will continue to look. But that becomes such an obsession that I knew I just have to go into the courtesan house to imagine where she might have lived and the life she might have had. I think that we are finding our countries, our communities, including many more people from different cultures. But I think it's simply an idea, or the notion that it's ideal if we all got together. I think we get together and we feel commonality in specific ways. Eating, we can all share food and we all agree that this food is good. Or when women join together with a common cause, or when we are all, concerned with humanity in a different way, or maybe we'll come together about the environment. But we all have differences in philosophy and culture, and that richness is also a difficulty for us to always have complete agreement on things. So my realistic self, my pragmatic self says, not completely. The other part says, harmoniously at the various levels, yes. Hope, the hope. If only that could happen in many parts of the world, and we know what they are, those places. Religion is a big dividing issue. One of the big movements that happened recently was 1 Billion Rising, where women from around the world came together and said, yes, I count. I'm important. I'm an important person, and will fight for myself and for other women as well. So when that happens with that awareness, it's a strength that I think gives other women the encouragement that things can get better, especially in those countries where women are treated in a very subservient way, where they have very few rights, whether they marry or what happens to their bodies, or education, the kind of thoughts that are put into their heads. I think education is the single most important way that we start equalizing women in the world, giving them the tools through education. because through education they can also begin to free themselves from poverty to become more independent that way. So, so there are many ways we can work together. We can work on education together. I think of that chapter, The Etiquette for Beauties of the Boudoir, as being also a very funny chapter, because the instruction on what the courtesan should do in creating illusions for men is also about the ego of the man, the desires of the man, and it appeals to one part of him, the ideal of himself. And it also has to do with our desires, you know, together to belong. Not so much about sex, but it's about sex as illusion, as a way to reach our romantic selves. I hope not. This, you know, this is like a menu, you know, that is presented there. It's like, oh, if this man needs to, you know, have something to make his ego feel better, this is what you should try. And it's that way, it's presented in that way, but by a very knowledgeable and wiser courtesan named Cabeza Mágica, who's learned through difficulties. And it's through the difficulties she can be very pragmatic and say, here, you do this, you do this. No illusion that this is truly romance. Do not confuse it with romance, because then you will damage yourself. And that's who, you know, that's what that chapter really is about, how to survive. You know, it's funny that people think the characters in my books that they're terrible men, and she must have had something terrible happen to her, you know, that she would write in that way. But and in fact, my husband and I have been together for 44 years, so we have a very good relationship. But I find it's rather boring to write about people who are absolutely happy. You know, where are they going to go from there? They're static. They're happy right in this place. They're not going to go this way or that way and have any conflicts. They're going to deepen who they are. So in fiction, we have to remove that thing that is ideal and romantic and go into the part that is deeper. And unfortunately, when you're writing about women, you have to use men in that way. One of the ways in which they have to go deeper is to have this conflict of themselves, not necessarily just the man, but a conflict of who they are, in contrast to what is expected of them by men. That was a question I asked myself after the success of my first book. I kept thinking, what did they like about the book? Was it, you know, mothers and daughters? Was it the exotic? And so I didn't know what was exotic. And I tried with the second book to write many different versions that I thought meant exotic. And I finally had to let that go and just say, just write about what's important. And that the second one, so that it comes more naturally, but then people would find the details still exotic. I let them decide what's exotic. I just write. I have to build my story with the idea I'm there, and I know what's next to me here, and what I'm wearing, and what's out there, and what I'm smelling. And that is whatever is natural to the story. If it becomes exotic to the reader, then maybe that's good, because they'll enjoy that more. On that level, they'll enjoy it. I'm not fond of it. I would never say to introduce myself to somebody and say, I'm the best-selling author, Amy Tan, because it's a marketing term. And I can appreciate a publisher using that. But it's not the way I personally identify with myself. Well, I have one who has seen my work from the time I first began writing fiction, a writer named Molly Giles. She would not be very well known here in Spain at all. She is a wonderful writer who could give me advice, just react to what I was writing. I have the examples of great writers I've read. I think for most writers, Nabokov is one who we would say for language, for you know, a complexity of society and merged into beautiful words, you know, that he's a master. I have my own examples of writers who've influenced me, like Louise Erdrich, who wrote a book called Love Medicine. And then now I have another editor at a house called Echo in the United States. And it's one, he happens to be a man. The first editor I've ever had is a man. But we've written a lot of emails back and forth. And it's that back and forth that makes me think harder about what I'm writing and the way I think. He reacts more to those ideas. So that's been very helpful, because the mentors in writing, the influences in writing, are not simply those who react to the pages. They react to the ideas that I have as a person, daily, on a daily basis. We retired in 2012, but we seem to be having reunions now. We had our first reunion in November 2013. We love each other too much as friends to stop, so we will always get together whether we have an audience or not and just play together. I put on a costume and I become I let go of the serious part of myself. I often let go of the serious part of myself, but with the costume on, I am a dominatrix. And how could I possibly be serious about anything? I don't have to worry that I'm not a good singer. I can act out a role and be completely different, and it's a lot of fun. I've learned through the band that performance is different each time. Even though you seem to be doing the same thing, the performance is different because the audience is different. And when the audience reacts, you react in a similar fashion. The more an audience gives you, the more you give back. So I learned to enjoy performance more through the band. No, in high school, and then for a very long time I didn't use it, and then now I've been using it more, believe it or not, because of a little dog. I adopted a little dog, and I found I didn't know where the dog came from, and one day I said to the dog, "Siéntate," and he goes, and I said, "Oh, you speak Spanish, my little boy, okay, precioso, mi niño, oh." Vengas conmigo, ¿quieres comer? So I've been talking in Spanish to my dog. Perrito, oh, qué niño, oh, qué lindo niño, pobrecito, ¿dónde? You know, ¿de dónde?